You lived a long life. I remember you from my childhood. I couldn't enjoy you back then, but I knew you were there. And just when I was ready to share life's joys with you, I found out you were beyond healing. We sought out several experts to see if they could help. But alas, it was not feasible to restore you to health, or even to a condition where you could be enjoyed. You shall always be in my heart and in my watchbox. Farewell, my friend. Stay tuned to hear what I believe will be the final chapter in my efforts to repair my Tiffany branded Patek Philippe watch. Don't worry, we're over the morose portion of this video. Welcome to Adventures with Time. I'm your host, Bob. On this channel, I talk about my experiences with watches, such as this Tiffany branded Patek Philippe watch from the 1920s. If that interests you, please hit that subscribe button and ring that bell icon so you're alerted whenever I upload a new video. And if you like pictures of watches, follow me on Instagram. Before I tell you the latest update in this adventure, let's go back to where this story started for me. When I became interested in watches about 2.5 years ago, I dug out all the watches I had. One of them was this Tiffany branded Patek Philippe watch. Originally, it was given to my great uncle by his mother, my great grandmother. This was back in 1923. My earliest remembrances of this watch as a boy was when I used to see it sitting in my father's dresser drawer. It was given to my father by my great uncle, my mother's uncle. I assume because of its condition. My great uncle probably asked my father if he would like to have the watch in its current damaged condition, because my great uncle was not one to trouble himself with such mundane activities as repairing a watch. There the watch sat in my father's dresser in disrepair, not running for many years, until I pulled it out when I started collecting watches. I decided I wanted to see if I could get the watch repaired, at least to the point where I could wear it without the danger of it falling apart on my wrist. For an initial visual inspection, I knew the watch needed a new crystal, as it was pretty well cracked, a new strap, because it is falling apart, and a hinge pin to the case. For this watch, the case opens up by pulling out the front with the crystal on it, and it pivots on a hinge. And the dial probably needs some cleaning. But I didn't want to lose that aged look, and I'm willing to live with its dirty appearance if necessary. And I just need the watch to run and keep fairly good time, good enough for those occasions where I would dare to watch it. After all, it's almost 100 years old. So I decided to take it to Tiffany for a repair estimate. That was 2 years ago, and it took 6 months to get an estimate back. I chronicled that 6-month estimation process in a previous video. I'll leave a link to that up here and spare you the details, except to let you know that the watch turned out to be manufactured by Patek Philippe, and it was Patek in Geneva that provided the final repair estimate to Tiffany, who in turn provided it to me. They wanted $20,000 to return the watch to working condition. That was not something I was willing to undertake at that time. But despite emailing and calling Tiffany, I could not get much detail as to why the watch required so much work, as I had observed the watch keeping good time. I reviewed the Tiffany estimate with some respectable watch people I know, as I felt I didn't really need to get the watch back to pristine condition. As I said, I merely wanted it to run, look nice for its age, and minimize the risk of something breaking while I was wearing it. But I was told by several people that no watch repair shop would perform a partial repair on an item like this. Some of them gave me prices, and the best I could get for the same repairs as Patek defined was $10,000, half the cost that Tiffany wanted. But still, I wasn't sure why such a drastic amount of work was required. So I let the watch sit in my vault for quite some time. But as a result of that video, it was suggested that I take the watch to a specific high-end watchmaker in New York City. So last month, December of 2019, I was finally able to talk to this watch expert about my watch. He suggested I send him the watch to examine. A week after I sent it to him, I received an email saying that he was unable to help me, as he is unable to get any parts for this watch, especially the crystal. I called him to get some details. Basically, he told me that Patek no longer supplies watch parts, and to quote him, not even a tiny screw. He didn't look much beyond the crystal, but let me know that even the crystal was a special part, and nobody can cut one or even get the appropriate blanks. Since I had also sent him a picture from my time grapher, he surmised that the watch would also need at least a mainspring. The current one had very low amplitude. As you can imagine, this was disappointing, as I figured that if he can't help me, the chances of getting the watch repaired from anyone else but Patek was virtually impossible. Rather than have him send me the watch back, I decided to take a day and travel into New York City. I would pick up the watch and perhaps take it over to Patek's service office in Midtown Manhattan. After picking up the watch, I went over to Rockefeller Center and went up to the Patek office. We were led into a small private room where I explained the long story to a customer service representative. She took the watch and told us she would see what information she could dig up about the previous estimate and have the watch looked over by one of their watchmakers there on premises, in hopes of providing more details to me. And she delivered. About 10 minutes later, she returned to tell me that she had lots of information, but most of it was bad news. First, the crystal currently in the watch was not a Patek part. Neither was the crown, which surprised me, but that the movement was an original Patek movement, as was the dial and hands, but they had been touched up by a non-Patek craftsman. How she knew it wasn't a Patek craftsman who touched up the dial is a curious question, but really inconsequential. It's apparent that sometime early on in the life of this watch, before it was given to my father, it must have been worked on by a non-Patek person. She went on to explain that although the watch appeared to be running and keeping time, it is not running as it should, and the movement was out of balance. Their assessment was that the watch was so old that the oil on the components had dried, causing the raw metal in the movement gears to rub against each other. And due to age, parts had rusted. These items would all need to be replaced, and given the age of the watch, these parts would have to be pivoted, a term meaning that the parts needed to be handmade. She said that essentially all the moving parts would have to be replaced. And she reiterated that neither Patek or any other watchmaker would perform a partial repair by just replacing the crystal or perhaps the mainspring also. When a watch is repaired, the watchmaker provides a warranty and therefore requires the watch to be repaired to a full working condition. So I have my answers. I now understand why the watch requires such an extensive repair and why the cost of that repair is so high. So that leaves me with a few options. First, pay Patek to refurbish the watch to good working order. Yeah, I could find another qualified watchmaker to make the new parts as best they can. However, I feel that if one is going to have handmade parts for a Patek watch, they should be made by a Patek craftsman. Or I could sell the watch and let someone else have the joy and expense of repairing the watch. I've already gotten a few offers for people to buy the watch. And finally, I could keep the watch in its current condition as part of my collection and pass it down to my children as a family heirloom. While I'm sure you know my decision, I could never let this watch go. For me, this is the end of the adventure for this watch, but not the end of my enjoyment. I have very fond memories of my great uncle and want to remember him through this watch. Let me know what you think about my decision. Would you let someone else other than Patek work on the watch, even if it could cost $10,000? Or would you spend the full $20,000 and have Patek repair it? Who knows? Maybe in the future, Patek will have a way of repairing this watch for much less money. Thanks for watching. See you in my next adventure.